BBC News from Radio Devon and Dorset FM.
With Julia Peach, the headlines. Hundreds marched through London calling for the removal of troops from Northern Ireland.
On 9.99 and 13.59 in the medium wave, 96.1 FM in stereo, we are first in the south. BBC Radio Solent.
Following the news at 10, travel news, and on this day in history. The time, 10 o'clock.
BBC Radio Bristol and Somerset Sound News.
BBC Radio Bristol and BBC Somerset Sound travel news.
At Police Traffic Control this morning, Pat Gardner.
Thank you, good morning.
100 miles of coastline, 2,000 square miles of countryside, and 500,000 listeners every week. This is BBC Radio Bristol, news for the world in the heart of the West.
And welcome to hour number 2 of the Sunday Morning Request programme with me, Simon Kempster, sitting in for Vicky Cook. She returns to our radios next Sunday between 9 and 12.
Our next news up is...
You're listening to the Sunday Lunchbox, this week presented by John Cuttle and Andy Worth.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunday Lunchbox. All the gang's here, Tracy's out there on the telephone.
The stories that matter, the news that counts. BBC Dorset FM.
And it's Dorset's week.
See Dorset FM, your information station.
Regional radio in the southwest from the BBC.
Travel news from BBC Radio Devon and Dorset FM.
It's to Dorset we go first.
From Romsey to Shanklin, from Winchester to Poole, BBC Radio Solent, first in the south. Traffic and travel news from BBC Radio Solent. Richard Cartridge on BBC Radio Solent. Kieran McGeary on BBC Radio Solent. BBC Radio Bristol travel news.
A Road Watch, this is Simon Hawkins.
Thank you, Simon. More travel news as we go through the afternoon. From 4:30 onwards, we have reports every 15 minutes from police traffic control.
From Bournemouth to Cowes, from Salisbury to Brockenhurst, BBC Radio Solent, first in the south.
And at the sports desk this afternoon, we find Matthew Pick.
And Hilary Snowden has a news summary for us.
Reynolds. County-wide reports from BBC Radio Devon and Dorset FM. Across Devon and Dorset, county-wide reports. BBC Radio Devon and Dorset FM, serving Devon on 103.4 FM and Dorset on 103.8. In North Devon, we're on 94.8, in Exeter 95.8, and in Oakhampton on 96. Local radio for Devon and Dorset from the BBC, the home of good conversation.
It's 6 o'clock on Monday, the 15th of August. This is County-Wide Reports. I'm Colin Cayley. The headlines this evening. At the news desk, Hilary Snowden. The sports headlines.
BBC News from Dorset FM.
With James Grice.
BBC Dorset FM News Hour.
From our news studios in Avon and Somerset and the worldwide resources of the BBC, this is the News Hour at 12 on BBC Radio Bristol. Let's
Travel news from BBC Dorset FM.
Good afternoon. Well, it seems no reported problems in the county. Traffic looks to be moving fairly well.
And a very good evening to you. You're listening to BBC Southwest.
Across the Channel Islands, in FM in stereo, you're listening to Radio Jersey and Radio Guernsey. From the BBC, the voice of the islands.
And coming up in the next hour, we will, for you, be talking to the bicycle teams. Yes, the bicycle polo teams. Can you believe it? We shall also be talking to the judges of the moo-moos and the cow-cows. And the bar-bars and people like that. Yes, we're talking to the judges of the livestock, and we shall be giving you more of a flavour of the West Show live in Guernsey in the afternoon. Coming next, though, Radio Jersey and Radio Guernsey news from the BBC.
On BBC Radio Jersey and BBC Radio Guernsey, this is The Afternoon Show with Murray Norton. Music and chat to keep you going throughout the afternoon with Murray Norton.
From the BBC Radio Cornwall Traffic and Travel.
The voice of the islands, BBC Radio Guernsey and BBC Radio Jersey. Across the Channel Islands, in FM in stereo, you're listening to Radio Jersey and Radio Guernsey. From the BBC, the voice of the islands.
Well, once again, thank you very much indeed for your company this afternoon with the West Show live in Guernsey. There's a full programme of events coming up later on this evening. I can tell you the display by the Guernsey Majorettes. There's the bicycle polo exhibition on at 7:30. Display of fencing, and the Old Guernsey evening starts at 8:30 here at the West Show. We're back again tomorrow with more of much the same, except we'll try and have less rain tomorrow if you don't mind, from 2 till 5 in the afternoon. Coming next, though, the Evening News Hour.
You're listening to the Radio Jersey Evening News Hour from the BBC, the voice of the island.
Good evening, it's 5 o'clock on Wednesday the 17th of August.
BBC Radio Jersey weather.
The forecast from 6 p.m. today until 6 a.m. tomorrow. The weather, any rain soon clearing, and then fair for a time this evening, otherwise cloudy.
Evening News Hour with Spencer Davies.
BBC Radio Jersey.
Coming.
You're listening to the Radio Jersey Evening News Hour from the BBC.
FM stereo. BBC Radio Jersey.
BBC Radio Jersey with news from around the world and around the island.
BBC Radio Jersey.
You're listening to the Radio Jersey Evening News Hour from the BBC.
BBC Radio Jersey.
Every French fishing boat from the Bay of St. Malo.
On 88.8 FM and 1026 AM, this is BBC Radio Jersey, the voice of the island.
So just to emphasise that, Gory Fate will not be cancelled. The funfair is presently being erected. Come rain or shine, there will be a Gory Fate. Coming up after 6, a major British charities claiming the needs of deaf people are often overlooked by the tourist industry. And Jersey's athletes at the Commonwealth Games in Canada are making final preparations for their events. And a Russian submarine opens its hatch to the public for the first time this weekend. But now the Radio Jersey News from the BBC with Emma Gilliam.
With Spencer Davies.
BBC Radio Jersey.
From 5 till 7 every weekday, this is Spencer Davies.
BBC Radio Jersey.
From the BBC, Radio Wales News.
It's 4 o'clock and this is Kerry Barrington. Scientists at the
The Evening News Hour with John Tyler.
BBC Radio Guernsey.
On 93.2 FM and 1116 AM, this is BBC Radio Guernsey, the voice of the islands.
very enjoyable conversation with Bruce Parker, recorded a couple of weeks ago when he was in the island. I hope you enjoyed that. Tomorrow evening after 6 we speak to Dooney Russell, the golf pro at Le Grand Mare. Get your clubs out. Make a date for about 6:05 tomorrow evening. Next it's Radio Guernsey News from the BBC, brought to you by Nicky Norman.